Welcome back to my Tampa, Florida Living podcast. Today, we're going to discuss an interesting article I read the other day. It was about the things that Tampa Bay needs in order to make it a better place in the near future. So I want to kind of dive into those topics. And I have Anjali, one of my realtor associates from my team, here to discuss those topics with us. So let's just dive right in, right? So topic number one, it was housing. I think that's not a big surprise for anybody. Housing, affordability, right? Prices have gone up. It's really changed the market. And I think just locals are really feeling it. Those even moving in are getting a little surprised, right? Because Tampa Bay's always kind of flown under the radar with their prices and what we have to offer. And now that things have gone up, we've had, past COVID, we've had 1, 2, 3 years of double-digit increases in prices. So here we are today. I mean, Anjali, what comes to your mind as far as housing and potentially affordability as another portion of that topic?
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Let me start with saying I love Tampa Bay. I've lived around the world and I have never found a nicer place than this. I absolutely love it. But having said which, everything could do with a little bit of improvement. And I think one of the big things that we have is the housing issue out here. Not enough housing for the demand of the amount of people that are coming to our beautiful Sunshine City.
Yeah, we were put in a spotlight for sure.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, COVID. But yes, I mean, given the option of living in this beautiful sunshine or shoveling snow, I think it's a no-brainer, which is why we have so many people coming here and not enough housing for all of them. And I think the bigger issue is not having enough housing for first-time home buyers. They're kind of getting priced out with the influx of all the, out-of-state buyers that are coming in. So there definitely needs to be more of a focus on that.
Yeah, I think we read articles, doing my research for all these videos, right? There's 1,000 people still, 1,000 people a day moving to Florida and about 150 to Tampa alone. So we still have that influx of people coming into the city. And as we grow, we're trying to adapt the best we can. And I think so far Tampa's done a great job. But
True.
Yes, as prices have gone up, average home price is just over 400,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't matter if it's resale or new construction, it's still over 400,000. And so, yes, as a first-time home buyer, as somebody potentially thinking of selling their house, let's say they have a well-established house and, they had it locked in at 3% or 2%, and now they're trying to sell that and downsize their home.
Yeah.
But they're buying at a 7% interest rate. Yeah, I mean, things are tough. And we talked about that in one of our last podcasts. We were talking about, we had the mortgage rep, Brian Marks, on with us. We were talking about the different market, environment, I guess. But it's kind of those golden handcuffs. They can't sell, they can't buy. So that has restricted our inventory, which means we don't have that many options. And whenever inventory is restricted and we have a demand of buyers with all the people coming in, prices are going to stay up. And I think that's going to be kind of our new norm for the foreseeable future. I don't see prices crashing down 20%. I think they're just going to flatline. But with all that said,
but that's a good thing, right? Because that means that property values are increasing for the people that have homes here. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, right? We were very undervalued. I mean, we were selling houses at $250,000 just a handful of years back.
Yep.
And when you really look at Tampa, everything it has to offer, having water access, an hour from Orlando, which is Disney World. And I tell my kids, people save up their entire life just to visit Disney World.
So
and
true.
we
are living in the best holiday destination there is.
Yeah. And we have everything right here. So, but affordability, how do they fix that? I think it's tough. But one thing that came to mind, and, Jane Castor, our mayor, I think, love her or hate her, she's working on some things. And I think one of the topics that is coming up soon to talk about is ADU properties. So having those accessory properties in your house, which helps with density issues as cities grow. Right now, a lot of our housing, it's, rated for single family housing, and that's it. And you can't put a multifamily house or a townhome or any of those things on your property because it's rated that way. So I think they're going to start thinking, or at least talking about different zoning and changing zoning in certain areas specifically for the city to allow you to put maybe a mother-in-law suite in the back and you could rent it out, or maybe creating multifamily, townhomes on a property where right now, going back to like the 50s is where our zoning was. Well, a lot has changed in our city since the 50s, right?
A lot.
So,
And
I mean, do
this,
you think that would be helpful with some of the people that you're talking to, or do you think that would be a direction to head? What are your
that
thoughts?
is definitely a direction to head because it's a necessity. One of the other changes that we saw with the pandemic was a lot of consolidation of family. As
Yes.
the prices of everything went up, including housing, affordability became an issue, and we're seeing more generational living happening versus the nuclear living that we saw earlier. And that makes complete sense to me as an Indian because, hey, that's how we live. So, yes, there is a lot of that happening. And the more we are cognizant of that and start equipping ourselves for that, the better it's going to be. You're not going to have people trying to break code and, or just like cram people in because it's inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah. I
We,
mean, no, I think that's very good point. The multifamily living together. I mean, a lot of the people that we have coming in, they're bringing family. When people
yeah,
move here, they're like, hey, we're coming with family.
yeah,
Or they're like, hey, you know, well, let's put it this way. The new construction stuff that we're selling, I think we've sold one or two multi-gen models. That's kind of the new thing coming out. And those things sell off like hotcakes. And it's like, wow, I
absolutely.
can have this and still have a little side room for them. It works out perfectly. So yes, there's a high demand for that. I also think, being able to rent it out, not that we want to turn our
Exactly.
city into an investor world, but when you think about people that are renting, I have a few friends that rent right now and they're like, man, it's getting tough. It's getting expensive.
Mhm.
But if I had there's a single guy or single girl, right? If they just
Absolutely.
had a unit, my niece just reached out that she just finished college. She got a new job. She's looking for a place to stay, right? She grew out of her family home and everybody goes to that period. She would love it if I just had a mother-in-law suite in the back that I could just rent to her, right?
Yeah,
So that's a perfect scenario. Somebody that's young professional, just getting started, that's like, hey, I want to be out on my own. I need to kind of go out into the
exactly.
world, but I
I've
can't
just helped
afford.
a, yeah, I've just helped a client buy a house like that, and he's just come out of the army back into the civilian world.
Yeah.
It's crazy expensive. If he has to pay the mortgage on just the one house himself, but if it has 2 rooms or 3 rooms and he can have someone come in, there's safety, there's security, but there's also financial security in that.
Yep. And on the flip side, there's a couple other topics that make me think about this when we talk about affordability. I don't think we could say anything right now across the board from eggs to milk to gas to whatever fits affordability. Like that word is like out the window now. So
Totally.
looking at it from a reality standpoint, like this is our scenario, and I don't think it's going to change. I don't think the market's crashing tomorrow,
It definitely
Um,
isn't.
but with that being said, we're the 17th largest metro, right,
Mhm.
in the country. Not New York, we're not Chicago, but we're also not Mobile, Alabama. So that being said, when you compare it to everything that Tampa has to offer, when you compare that to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, even Orlando, we're actually more affordable than those cities still.
And
So
often more.
yes, and so sometimes you have people that are coming from those bigger metros or those other
Yep.
metros like Nashville, Austin. Those are similar sized metros that are way more expensive than we are. When they're coming from those areas, they're like, "Well, Tampa's not as cheap as I thought, but it's actually way more affordable
Cheaper
than where I'm
than,
coming
yeah.
from."
Yep.
Right. So, there's two sides of that coin, and I understand that we're not the most affordable place anymore, but we're also not the most expensive, especially for the size of Tampa. The charm of Tampa, though, is that we still hold on to some of those traditions and we hold on to some of those older aspects. It's not this brand new, shiny object. When people come into town, they're like, oh, Tampa looks a little more quaint than I really thought it was. It's like,
It's got
because it still has
character.
that feel.
Yeah, it's got character, it's got history. And I think that is really where your value for money comes in versus all these other places. There is a lot of cultural um, there's a lot of
Diversity
culture
and mixture.
here.
It's a melting pot. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you could feel the influences all around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so accepting of everyone. I always tell people when they visit, I'm like, the only thing warmer than the climate out here and the temperatures out here is the people.
Yeah. If you're open to it. Because again, there's two sides. I have people that are like, oh, it's rough or there's rough. I'm like, listen, it's a city. But if you're looking for that, you're going to find it. If you're looking for the positivity, you're going to find
Absolutely.
that too. The other thing I'll say though, and we were just talking about this the other day, you and I, is, I have people that say, oh, you showcase High Park or you showcase some of these like really nice areas, multi-million dollar houses. That's not considered affordable. There's no chance somebody like me could ever live there. Like I get those comments, those negative comments too. And, I think it's everybody's perspective on what they want as well. A good friend of mine rents in Davis Island, and I think rent is like $1,600. Is that the most affordable? It's not the most. It's not the most affordable, but it's also not the most expensive to be in the most sought after area in Tampa.
Absolutely. I'm stunned at that price. Yep.
And keep in mind, it's a one bedroom. And it's a 1970s building. So it's not going to have the glitz and the glamour and the concierge and all that stuff. But he gets to choose his location, which is the concept there, right? He has walkability, he has the bikeability, he can Uber anywhere in the city. And he chose that knowing that he's going to give up a little bit on the luxury side, right? Because he's choosing location over anything else. So there are affordable spots. You just, may not get the best of the best necessarily, because a lot of times you get what you pay for sometimes, right?
True.
Anyway, I hope we do have more affordable options. The other thing that brings to mind though, as we talk about the density and because that word scares a lot of people. It's like, oh, that sounds like not like fun, right? You always mentioned, well, the next issue becomes infrastructure. We have to be able to handle the traffic and the roadways. And I feel like Tampa, for as long as I can remember, right? Go back 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, has always had construction. We're always building a new road somewhere else because it's like we just never stop expanding. So it's not like a new thing. It's just probably on steroids a little bit. So to help with that traffic, I will say this. It's more congested than it was 5 years ago. It's more congested than it was 10 years ago, but it's still not horrible.
It isn't. I've lived in other cities and by no means is it horrible. I mean, come on, people, you might have to drive a little slower at 2 hours of the day or whatever, but that's fine. I mean, that's called living in a city. If you want to fly down the roads and have no one else there, you're living in the middle of the desert. But having said which, I think there is still a lot that can be done to improve it. And I think the city is working towards it. One of the things I wish they really would work towards is getting the I-4 parking lot sorted out and connect us to Orlando and other places via rail, which is something that's been talked about. That would take such a huge chunk of, the traffic off and the troubles and the carbon emissions, all of that. It would make it a lot easier.
Well, I know our mayor actually went over to, they just opened up the Bright Line station. I believe that's the train you're talking about. It's a high speed. It's like 150 mile an hour train. So high speed train that currently has, I think it's 2018. It's been running in South Florida, Miami, Boca, Fort Lauderdale, all that area. They just opened up the stop in Orlando a few months back. And I believe she went over there to kind of just study that and understand what that opening looked like. And so far it's been a success, but yes, we are in talks right now of getting the Brightline train as a stop in Tampa. We already have the Amtrak, which connects Orlando, basically goes all the way up to, I think it's Chicago. But the Amtrak,
we need the local connect, which makes it so much easier, especially because you've got a really large airport there. And of course, you've got Disney and Universal and stuff. So it would be really helpful.
Well, Orlando's, I-4 is the main vein that just goes east-west. Like 75 is really not an issue. I just traveled that this weekend as I went up to North Florida. 75 is no problem. 95 is not that big of a deal on the other side of the coast. But going across, all we have is I-4.
Yeah.
So really having something else to alleviate that pain, because I-4 is a parking lot nowadays.
You
Like,
don't call it the
I've
I-4
literally
parking lot for nothing.
I've seen a hot air balloon crash on the and then everything shut down. I've seen everything from that to just somebody changing a tire, and it's like you get on, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go to Orlando this weekend,
Yeah.
and you get on the road, and
And 6
everything's like,
hours
oh,
later.
it's an hour and 20 minutes, no big deal. And then it goes from that to an hour and 50, and then you're on the road, and another accident happens, and it's like within that time frame, it's just like so much can change.
I don't
So
think a
I
day
always
has gone
say,
by when they haven't had an accident there, and it's crazy. And all of
uh,
you'd be saving so much of, uh, trauma to human life as well by just having that option.
yep. So Bright Line train would be a great option, I think, for us. And I think this is in the far future. Like, you can't just dive into it right now because we've had an influx of people. But I do think that it would be really neat to have some local transit. I mean, something that goes Tampa to St.
Yes.
Pete, something that really, and this is like where my mind's at, is something that takes us out to the suburbs as the suburbs start to expand.
Or
It's almost
even
like when
like
you think of,
just going from Riverview across to St. Pete, or that side across the water down there in the bay. Even things like that would be great.
yeah, I mean, and then even our local spots, because I mean, you got to think 75 is already busy because that's a busy highway that goes Michigan down south. So that's already busy with traffic. But then when you add the local congestion there, that's going to become more and more and more. And the Veterans Expressway is actually, it's a really nice toll road. That's a breeze to me.
I
But
love it. I go on it every day. It's fabulous. Yep.
yep. But getting us around other places, it's funny. We help people all the time, and one of the cures for traffic at times is knowing the times to travel,
Yes.
knowing the back roads in a way, or the back routes,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other option there is, which we help as realtors when people are moving in. It's like, okay, let's understand where you're living. Like, you don't want to live in Wesley Chapel if you're a pilot that has to go to the airport a couple days a week. You don't want to live in deep Odessa if you work in downtown, because you're literally going opposite ends of the city and you're fighting city traffic to go crossways. So understanding where you live and where you function more of your life, live closer to that, so that you're not driving an hour every day. You're driving maybe 20 minutes to work, which is not bad.
Absolutely. I
So
always, that's one of my first questions to them. What's your anchor point? I like calling it an anchor point. So
yeah,
whether that's an office that you have to, work from, so you need to be around that, or if it's a school that you have to, what is your anchor point? And, even if they really love, because there is so much happening in Wesley Chapel and so much of new
yeah,
construction, so much of, shopping and eating and dining in the outlet malls, even if they do want to live there, how to find the right place for them so then they're closer to the interstate and can hop on it. And like Epperson's, 5 minutes down the road, just hop on
yep,
the interstate and you're out. So, which is why I guess you really need someone who knows the city and knows where things are, whether you're going to get blocked by school times on a certain road, or because that is so much fun.
yeah. No, absolutely. That's funny, and I won't dive too much into this, but I've always said, MacDill Air Force Base employs, I think it's like 20,000 people or something like
Hmm.
that, and a lot of them lives in our southeastern suburbs. When they
Yep.
want to live off base, Riverview all the way down to Lithia. Lithia
Yes.
is really popular with military.
Hmm.
So they have a busing system, but I couldn't imagine busing all the way up and then all the way back down to MacDill every day. If they had some kind of ferry, and I know that stinks, like especially when we have storms, if they had a ferry, something to help them out, I
That
think
would
that
be
would be a big plus
It would definitely be a big plus,
on that
just have a
end.
ferry going.
Yeah. So, as we talk about all this, it seems like the topics that we're talking about to help for the future of Tampa are really growing pains. It seems like it's like, well, we're growing. That's the obvious. So it's like, how do we help our city as we grow to keep it as fun as it's been? Because that's what living in Tampa is just fun, right? It's like we
Oh,
always have this
best.
live, work, play mentality. And I feel like sometimes it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that work side of things because we're always living and playing. But schooling
I,
is one thing that, Florida doesn't have the best rep, I guess, or from what I hear. I mean, I don't know. I went to school here and I had plenty of friends that went to one went to an Ivy League, other ones went to University of Florida, which is a great college. And
Yeah.
we've got some really good state colleges, including USF, that's local here, University of South
Oh,
Florida. We have
Bulls. That's where my
hey,
daughter is.
there you go. University of Tampa, that's a great private college in
Yes.
Tampa. And then even St. Leo, which is right up north in the suburbs. So I just think that sometimes we need, especially with the influx, some of our schools are getting overloaded, or maybe they don't have the proper programs to handle the influx. I know we're starting to really throw in some charter schools, which I think are a nice bonus, because
Those
we're
are
not having
very
to
needed.
rezone public schools. That would just really change things.
Yeah.
As far as where you lived, because it's like, wait a minute, I live here for the address. Now
Mhm.
you're telling me I'm not part of that school. That would really throw
Yeah.
a wrench. So charter schools have done a good job of helping that. But I think you mentioned to me at one point STEM schools. How would that, and then tying in that into like affordability? What are some of your thoughts there with STEM schools?
Okay, so again, going back to my Indian roots,
Okay.
STEM is core. There, we don't have enough of an emphasis on it in the schooling system here, in the general public schooling system. There needs to be a lot more emphasis on that, because that is the foundation of everything else. So
Yeah.
STEM and STEAM, the STEAM, throwing in the A becomes the arts bit, but it is very important, and we need to have more focused programs on it, which I think a lot of the charters are doing, which is why they are so popular, because they
Yeah.
focus on just one or all parts of the STEM program. Um, Hands-on approach, that is a lot more what we need, not just talking about, oh, we have science in our school. Yeah, everyone has science and math, but
Yeah.
actually focusing in on it, that would take our grades up, that would improve the schooling system, and as a byproduct, that would improve the city and
Yeah.
everyone who lives in it, and would
Yep.
definitely help us realtors, because that's the first question I normally get asked. I want a
Yeah.
house in
Where are
a
the good schools?
great school district. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, you're like, well, define what's great for you, because it's
Yeah.
different for everyone.
It, it is. It is. And
IB,
you
we need
even
more IB
brought
as
up,
well.
and you brought up maybe some scholarships or some kind of affordability programs to help make it accessible from everybody, right?
Absolutely. We
So,
definitely need more STEM scholarships going ahead. So then even kids in low income high schools or whatever, the areas from there, could actually afford to move up and get in these programs. And that is,
yeah.
I
I
cannot
will
say
say
enough
that I
about
have seen
education.
more and more of that happening. Right now, it was state backed, and
Yes.
I only know this in the private school sector, but they actually did just push out, like this is last year, they pushed out a ton of scholarships that were like just free scholarships for just
Uh-huh.
about anybody that applied, to allow them to get into private schools as well, because that helped alleviate some of the
Yeah,
public school scenarios. And so, and I noticed that in my daughter's school, because we saw a bunch of that happening as well. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's nothing better than starting with schooling. It's kind of like the bottom up, right?
absolutely.
So now a lot of that takes me again to the suburbs, because our suburbs are the biggest growing areas right now. A lot of people moving here, which is funny. As a locals are just old school locals. Like the suburbs didn't exist, so a lot of us are like, the city's where it's at, right? That's our baby. That's our
Those
home.
are orange
That's our
groves up there.
Yes, yeah, that's our playground. Now all of the suburbs are just blossoming, right? Odessa, Wesley Chapel, Lithia. Riverview's been around for a bit, but now we're seeing Apollo Beach kind of blossom out. So like all these
Parish,
different,
all of that. Yeah.
yeah, all these different areas are popping up. But now the schools they're getting new schools, because they didn't have the schooling to handle the influx of new residents. So now they're getting new schools and they're getting all those things, but the two things they're missing are, kind of the entertainment in a way. I think we're seeing that entertainment and restaurants and all those things to do in places like Wesley Chapel. And but like when you get to certain suburbs, I feel like, one of the downsides is they don't have so much. So they're always trying to like, well, I got to come 40 minutes into the city.
Yes, that is true. Ask me, I
I,
live in a suburb and I do that all the
yeah,
time. We've got one really good restaurant here. So if you want a really good restaurant, and we have what I think all of three Michelin star restaurants out here. So you do have to
3 in
go
Tampa.
into the city, which again adds to the congestion. We could do with a little more sprinkling in the burbs.
Yeah, and I think all of that will happen in time. Like Odessa, for example, there was nothing there. And now it's like that whole Odessa going even more towards Trinity, which, not everybody travels that much, but that's starting to like really open up.
Trinity is fabulous these days. I mean,
And
it used to be no one ever heard of it. You've got
yeah,
great schools like Mitchell. You've got a lot of construction. You've got a lot of great restaurants there. There's so much happening. It's really
yep.
blossoming.
But as that happens, now it's like they don't always have to come into the city. That's like their home away from home now. That's like, okay. And now when they come into the city, it's just a luxury. It's like, oh, we're going to go into the city. That's fun for the weekend.
Yeah,
But they don't have to. And that's kind of becoming the beauty of the suburbs to some people and the attraction.
absolutely.
It's like, we don't want to live in the hustle and bustle. We want that, good school. We want all the amenities nearby. And then we have these crazy master plan communities that we're seeing. And so they're really loving the suburbs. And that's like the hottest new thing, right?
And
But now
honestly,
let's
when
go.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I said when you live in something like an Epperson or a Mirada, you don't even need to go to the beach. You've got the beach right there. So it
Yeah.
just makes it really convenient. And sorry, Adam, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, I just think it's so that's the suburbs. I think the suburbs are blossoming, and that's maybe something the suburbs could use more as it starts to grow and as it becomes more
Yeah.
populated. Flipping back to the city, I think one of the biggest question marks with people that are not familiar with Tampa, they're like, hey, where's the most walkable areas? When the Tampa Riverwalk
Yeah.
first came a few years back, Armature Works, the Riverwalk, all the way down to Sparkman's Wharf, it connects all of our museums and even like hotels, which may sound like, kind of weird. Like, well, what's that matter? But you sometimes I'll go to the JW Marriott on the water and just have a drink. And it's
Uh-huh.
just a new place to go. I'm not staying at the Marriott. I'm just walking by, and then the Strass Center, and it just keeps going. And so that gave the city walkability. It gave us, all the attractions we already had. It just kind of
Mm,
connected them. And I feel like that changed the game. Downtown now has become very walkable. We have talking about transit, we have the streetcar that goes from Channelside into Ybor. So if you kind of wanted to like
I love
go,
that. It's so charming. It's so much of
yeah,
fun to do that.
yeah. So I mean, expanding that a little bit because I think that's awesome. And then when you get even Midtown is something that they created. Kind of they pitched it as a city within a city. I mean, let's just be fair. It's another retail commercial space that's fun, and it's just another great place. But the more that those pop up, and
Yeah.
maybe I, the only thing it needs is to connect a little bit more with its local environment, with
Mhm.
its residential people around like I feel like if they made that a little bit more intertwined within the community, that would be that much better. So finding those walkable spaces, maybe adding in some parks, as a city expands.
We definitely need more parks. We have a lot of trees out here, but you never have enough. We need more lungs out here, bigger lungs in the city. It's beautiful and it can definitely do with a lot more and a lot more arts and theater. I mean, wouldn't it be
Yeah.
beautiful to have different theaters all over, or theater programs in the various suburbs? That would be great. Not just have to come all the way to Straz, because that's the only place you really get good theater.
Yeah, I'm we discussed the arts. I feel like St. Pete really nails it on the head. I mean, they have the
Yes.
Chihuly Museum, they've got the Dali Museum. You really start to dive into the arts. And I
Uh-huh.
think that Tampa's probably on a little bit of a delay there, but I do think that it'll start spreading over because I mean, that's our neighbor, right?
Yes.
Um, I do think that I feel like we're sports heavy, we're party heavy. Like I think we celebrate everything, right? Margarita Festival, Cuban Sandwich Festival,
Gasparilla,
Gasper, like
my
every month
favorite.
it's like we make up an excuse to celebrate something. Um,
Absolutely.
Having a little, which is fun. I'm not complaining there. But I do feel like, yeah, maybe we can get a little bit more on the artsy side. So hopefully that'll come as well. Especially, and I could see that kind of sprouting out of places like Seminole Heights or, any of the heights, Riverside Heights. I feel like that would be a good place to spawn from because they already have kind of that cool, funky vibe there.
Very
And I could
eccentric.
feel it.
I'll see what. Yep. But it's so important to also get that going in, let's say, a Trinity or a Wesley Chapel or a Riverview, which are the burgeoning parts of the city. Get the arts going over there because, that culture is spawned from that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, I think from this list, what's funny is that, a lot of it, people look at negatives like, oh, the growing pains, like, oh, we need more affordable housing. We need better traffic. We need the schooling and the walkable areas and the parks and playgrounds and, all these things that we need. And I feel like, to be fair, we are attempting to tackle these things the best we can as a city.
And I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah. And I think that you also have to be cautious because, I've seen Austin, I've seen all these other cities that expanded a little bit too fast.
Yep.
and maybe found themselves into trouble. Even though Tampa's, kind of went boom, and just grew so fast. I don't know. I feel that we're at a good place still. I don't feel like it's out of control. I feel like we can hopefully improve on things because there's always pros and cons no matter where you go and what city you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But thus far, I think we've done a really good job at incorporating families and everything in the expansion of the city. Providing the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk's getting extended currently to the western side of the river, and really just incorporating this.
I love that project.
Yeah, we're not going to get Tom Brady back, but our sports are still thriving and we're still doing great there. So hopefully we will continue to go in the right direction. As a local, and I think I speak for all locals, seeing the city expand is exciting, and it's also a little sad in a way because some of our local quiet hot spots we now have to share with new people. But seeing the city expand into a new direction
is big enough, Adam.
But I liked it when nobody knew about us. But now that they do know about us, I am excited to share the city, and I'm excited to see the direction we're headed, right? Because we still have some of those local coffee shops and those local, you could still connect with locals, like the old traditional locals.
Yes.
But then we also get to experience new things. With my kids growing up, they get to experience things like the Riverwalk and, even head to St. Pete. Look how that's changed completely.
Oh my gosh, yes.
At the end of it, I think we're heading in the right direction. I think the future is bright here in Tampa, and I'm excited to see the direction it's headed. For those of you that are watching or listening, I'd love to hear from you in the comments what you think Tampa might need heading into the future. And, while it's really easy to throw down some negatives, I'd love to hear some of the positives as well.
Yeah. Tell us what you love about this beautiful place.
Yeah. So make sure to give us both. And, stay tuned because every week we're throwing another podcast together just like this, just talking about interesting topics. So until that next podcast or until that next video, I'll catch you later. Angela.